Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here on Thursday, August 21st. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And the Toronto Blue Jays are coming off a series loss to the Pittsburgh Pirates, and it's been certainly kind of an up and down August so far. Jori, how are we feeling about these Blue Jays coming off the series against the Pirates, the Tommy Pham drama, and set for a series in Miami where we will officially get to see Shane Bieber make his Blue Jays debut?
Yes, Bieber Fever is on the horizon, which is the positive. The negative is the Blue Jays are definitely sputtering and could certainly use the reinforcements as things speak. The pitching is about to undergo some pretty substantial changes, it seems like. It sounds like there'll be some guys shuffling up and down. There'll be some movement to the bullpen, which we'll get into. And of course, Bieber highlights that. And I'm starting to get concerned. A good start Friday would certainly calm those nerves.
So interesting, like overall time for the Blue Jays, I would say. Obviously they have kind of the slip coming out of the All-Star break, right? Like the poor series against the Orioles, not great series against the Royals, and then they go into Coors and they just dominate the Rockies, come out, drop a series to the Dodgers. I thought they looked really good in the Cubs and Rangers series. I thought like both of those series was pretty impressed with the way that they played, and then they kind of drop a stinker in Pittsburgh, where the Pirates have been like one of the better home teams in baseball. Kind of weird, baseball stat there, but overall the series, I mean, obviously things don't go the way that you want them to, but I mean, game one, Paul Skeens, so much weirdness in that game. Vlad gets hurt. The Tommy Pham stuff certainly kind of contributes to that. Game two, I mean, obviously they play well, win that one, and then the game yesterday where, it seemed like they just kind of let Oviedo off the hook a little bit throughout the game. So I mean, like on a scale of 1 to 10, like they've played better than I guess they did coming out of the trade deadline, but how concerned are you, like on a scale of 1 to 10, about this Pirates series and kind of in the grand scheme of them, being around 500 this month?
Yeah, the series itself is too small of a sample to get too high or too low
And we,
on,
we we've seen them lose series to bad teams before. It happens.
Exactly. The way I look at it is the Paul Skeens one, we kind of clowned on John Schneider for doing this last year, but it really is a bit of a tip your cap. It's Paul Skeens. If anyone deserves a tap, a tip of the cap, excuse me.
And they actually did all right. They scored twice against them.
I mean, Barger had the hardest hit ball ever off of Paul Skeens. I think it was 116. Moral victories. There was some other stuff that Barger was in the news for over the last couple games, but we'll maybe explore that when we talk about Pham. And then beyond that, they lose a one-run game. Again, they let the Pirates off the hook. You can't really let yourself get into that spot, but I think they walked out of that series with an even run differential, I believe. Not to, start the whole run differential discourse. But if you lose a one-run game and you basically score the same number of runs as the team you're facing, you could walk out of there 2-1 very easily. And are we talking about any kind of panic here? Probably not. Those are the games you're supposed to find a way to win. Now, beyond that three-game scope, if you extend that out and you look back again to that Orioles series, the pitching has kind of come apart at the seams. They're 8-11 now since July 28th. The run scoring has dried up. They're down to just over 4 runs a game, which is way down from what they've been over the course of the year. And pitching wise, they're giving up almost 5.5 games if you exclude the Rockies series. That, of course, 8-11 excludes the Rockies series, which, mind you, you don't get to pull the stinkers out the same way you don't get to pull the great ones out. But it's also, you can kind of see why that Rocky series is a bit of a weird one in the grand scheme of things. So, as far as concern level goes, it's higher than it probably was, even as much as like a week ago against the Dodgers.
Yeah, I think if you're comparing, say, this Pirates series to the A's series, where when they lost in Sacramento or whatever, like you're you're a little bit more concerned about this series loss than that one, just because of, the time of year, and it realistically was an opportunity for them to gain some ground in the American League East, and certainly they're going to have to, kind of do what they've done all year and bounce back, right? Because with the Red Sox and Yankees playing each other this weekend in a four-game set, you're taking on the Marlins. You're hoping that you get, probably some even play there. A series split certainly wouldn't hurt the Blue Jays, especially if they win the series, so that you can gain ground on both teams rather than just one of them, and maybe lose ground on one of the others. So, I think the concern level isn't really there, but the antennas are certainly up, where you're kind of like, all right, how is this going to go over the next week or so here, where you get the Marlins and the Twins, right? Because those are kind of the two series before you go into a stretch where it's like Milwaukee, the Reds are playing well, the Yankees, who have certainly kind of turned a little corner here, and the Astros. Like those four series are going to be tough ones for this team to kind of, and important ones for this team to kind of regain some of that momentum, right? Like I don't know. They're not playing like they were in July necessarily, because in July they were like a near 700 win percentage or whatever, but it's tough to maintain that. It's a 162 game grind, and we knew that some of the magic was going to cool off eventually. So as we kind of go forward here, I think this Marlins series is actually a pretty important one for them.
This Marlins series is really huge, and it's actually, you want to get into the schedule. I think we're deep enough in the season that strength of schedule definitely is a factor,
Yeah.
and nobody in the AL East has a tougher schedule than the Toronto Blue Jays. And I don't even know how close it is. It looks like Boston is the second most difficult. Their remaining schedule is roughly 500. Jays is closer to 512. I mean, in a small sample size like that, that's an additional two, three wins better than your opponents. Yankees have the fourth easiest schedule remaining.
The Yankees have seven left against the White Sox.
Like, you are gonna have to beat the teams in front of you that you're supposed to beat. The margin for error in a series against the Pirates right now is really minimal. And the Marlins are a tougher task than the Pirates are, I think.
Especially
Especially,
Yuri Perez on Sunday.
like, it doesn't get any easier uh, than the Pittsburgh Pirates in a lot of respects. And again, you could have walked out of that series 2-1. You look at just the inability to cash on Wednesday, and maybe you just kind of shrug your shoulders and go, you're due for a stinker once in a while. But the really important thing, I think, is that this can't snowball if it hasn't
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, no, 100%. And but I think one thing that this team has earned so far is the benefit of the doubt when it comes to, being able to respond and being resilient, because that's kind of their whole identity, right? So, we'll see. I mean, you know, um, I don't want to like necessarily overreact to the series or anything like that. It was a missed opportunity, and they got to prove that they are able to get right back on the horse. And I think, the Shane Bieber thing will kind of provide a little bit of a motivator, and I'm sure that they're going to be pretty fired up to play behind him tomorrow for sure.
Yeah, that Bieber game, I know it's in Miami, but would you be surprised if Miami pulled like a Yankees versus Marlins level crowd? You get a whole bunch of snowbirds going down there for Shane Bieber's first start as a Blue Jay. It's gonna be for a Marlins game, a good atmosphere, you would think. I mean, Jays fans already travel well. We heard all about it over the
Yeah.
series against the Pirates, how it was like a 50-50 split. It might be 60-40 in Miami.
I mean, what's better than a weekend in Miami where you get to watch a Shane Bieber Blue Jays debut?
It's probably a pretty good some some Blue Jays fans probably have had that one circled for the last 2 weeks or so.
Yes, it's I bet you it's going to draw insane numbers on TV too. Like I'm sure it'll be one of the most watched games of the year, which is kind of funny because it's, the
The
Marlins are,
Marlins.
yeah, and it's I who the Marlins, I don't even know who they have going in that game. I know that they have Perez on Sunday, but it looks like tomorrow they're going to have Jansen Junk against Shane Bieber. So Also, Edward, sorry, it's Yuri Perez on Saturday and Edward Cabrera on Sunday. So
Not an easy task. I
no,
mean, those are
no,
two good
two good
pitchers.
guys. Yeah.
Marlins have a good rotation, all things considered. Even Sandy's turned a corner in a certain way over the last little bit. So certainly doesn't feel like the Jays are going to get any relief on the litany of aces front.
All right, we've kind of talked around it a little bit, but let's do the Pham thing before we kind of dive fully into the bullpen. Tommy Pham on Monday's game, four pitch walk, flips his bat, says something to Tyler Heineman, bench is clear, whatever. Tyler Heineman says after the game that he didn't say anything to Tommy Pham and that it was unprovoked and weird. Which I mean,
This
yeah,
is
Tommy
Tommy
Pham,
Pham.
yeah, thank you. Um, and then after the game, it seems like kind of the dust has settled a little bit. Um,
And Tommy Pham
and then
decides to
Tom,
log on.
yeah, Tommy Pham gets a serious case of Twitter fingers and is replying to Keegan Matheson saying that, Heineman complaining about the zone was disrespectful. Like, I'm sure catchers don't do that every single game. He knows the zone. He's dropping F-bombs. And then, of course, he comes out and accuses Addison Barger of using
Twice.
steroids. Well, I think he,
Twice
he
he does
deleted a
that.
few tweets about Addison Barger. Um, and then, of course, it comes out, like there isn't really like any documented evidence of this, but that Addison Barger was suspended for in 2019 for PED, not steroids, but amphetamines. So, kind of news, I think, to some people there that did happen, but ultimately, at the end of the day, Barger even cleared it up that it was not for steroids, and that he's being tested all the time. So, just quite the sideshow, really. I think this series in Pittsburgh, which, for a mid-August series, I guess doesn't necessarily hurt all that much for your interest level in the team.
I mean, I don't think a midweek series against the Pirates was going to be all that exciting under most circumstances. Tommy Pham certainly uh, changed the prognosis of that. I'm just looking for the tweet. Uh, yeah, from Mitch Bannon, friend of the podcast, spoke with Addison Barger. He wanted to clarify. Sorry, excuse me. He wanted it clarified that he was suspended for a stimulant, not a steroid, 50 games in 2019. I mean, you can kind of connect the dots. A case of all dingers, homers, and dongs. I'll let you fill in the blanks on what that exactly means. But I suspect that it's just Tommy Pham being Tommy Pham. I think that's really it. It's a reason that the last couple teams he's been on have been the White Sox, if I recall correctly, and they certainly weren't exactly a top attraction. And the Pirates, and they're certainly not a top attraction. He's not exactly going from World Series contender to World Series contender.
Yeah, let's see. Let's look at the last few teams he's been on here. He's good. He went Padres in 21, Reds in 22, Red Sox in 22, Mets in 23, Diamondbacks in 23, White Sox in 24, Cardinals in 24, Royals in 24, to Pirates in 25.
Sorry,
So,
was that how many different teams is that? That's crazy, actually.
since 2021, it's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine teams.
Oh my God, Tommy Pham, don't unpack your suitcase. Of all the
You
guys to be
you
yipping.
you think he's renting?
Oh my God. Oh my Lord. That's crazy. 9 teams since 2021. God bless him. Man, I'd be aggravated too if I was Tommy Pham. I'd be in a pissy mood all the time also. That's a clubhouse. That screams clubhouse, right? That has to be something like that, right? You don't end up on 9 teams.
I don't know. Like, I mean, I wouldn't want to like speak out a turn about Tommy Pham without like knowing anything about him, but I think you can kind of read between the lines that there's, probably not the ideal guy that you want around. I think when you think he was suspended earlier this year for like flipping off a fan in LA, obviously there's the Jock Peterson fantasy football thing. You know, it's like, yeah. I don't
He's
I
uh
don't know.
he's uh he's MLB's most interesting man.
You know what's funny though is that I remember in the 2023 World Series, when they were playing when he was with the Diamondbacks when they were playing the Rangers, and he was 4 for 4, and he was one at bat away from tying like the most hits in a single World Series game or whatever. And he gave away his last at bat to some Diamondbacks bench player so that that guy would get an opportunity to hit in the World Series. So hey, there's a good Tommy Pham story for you in a sea
In
of
a
bad
sea
ones.
of yeah, definitely. Listen, if there was anyone that was going to cause a fracas during this series, it was always going to be Tommy Pham.
Yeah.
And then he wasn't even in the lineup on Saturday.
Yeah. That was kind of funny. Like, I mean,
That had to have been intentional, yes?
well, they weren't going to hit him, right? Like, there's no way that they were going to. Obviously, they
He-
didn't. They didn't yesterday. But again, I don't know how much a Chris Bassett sinker would kind of prove their point.
yeah, I mean, was a couple tweets out there basically saying to the effect, you plunk their stars, not their Tommy Phams.
Yeah, Paul Skeens isn't coming up to the plate though, so not much in the way of stars in that
Uh,
Pirates lineup, which
yeah, you go
unfortunately.
hit Andrew McCutcheon and he ends up on Medicaid as a result.
Jeez, you can't be going after Kutch like that. God. I don't even know. Like if you were, say you were super petty and you were on this Blue Jays team, who would you go after?
Who would I
Who would
plunk?
you hit?
I would go full Victor Robles. I would just
Oh my God.
that's the only way to do it.
Could you imagine if they like hit Horowitz or IKF, former Blue Jay?
Oh my
Um,
God. Oh my God. A guy takes ball four or guy it's like a drop whatever, a drop third strike or just a pitch in the dirt and the the batter picks the ball up and is the one that heaves it
yeah.
back.
Man, dude, that Pirates offense is so bad. I just have it pulled up here. They don't have a single player with the WRC plus above 100.
That's
Like not even an unqualified guy.
that's
Like,
depressing. That's deeply depressing. I mean, the Jays pitched okay over the series. It's not like they got lit up. It was that the offense didn't bother making the trip down to PNC.
yeah. Yeah. Vlad injury too. I mean, kind of takes the wind out of your sails a little bit. I would say, it's funny because last time they went to PNC Park, he suffered that wrist injury in 2023 and then missed the last two games of the series. So, Jays fans traveling down to Pittsburgh haven't really been able to see Vlad Jr. there. But it sounds like the hamstring thing seems kind of just like one of those things that crops up over 162. I would guess he's back tomorrow. I think it's they with the off day today, they're able to get him like 72 hours of rest or something like that, like more than that with the two off days and kind of the leaving game one early. Um, although it is, if Vlad Jr. is significantly hurt or hampered by this hamstring thing, um that would be pretty significant because he has been on fire in
He's
August.
been one of the five best qualified hitters, I believe, in the second half. I think it's something like Nick Kurtz, and then I'm trying to think who else was on that list. I know Otani's had a good second half, but Vlad's been on just some kind of tear. So any kind of injury of any substantial consequence would be no good. But here's kind of my sense is that the Jays didn't treat it like it was of concern.
Yeah.
They've also done that multiple times with multiple different players this year where the injury was of little concern, only for said player to miss 2 or 3 weeks. We'll see how it plays out. Vladdy tends to be on the field more than he doesn't. Plays almost 162 every year.
Yeah.
Like he's one of the really durable guys in baseball.
I think on At the
And
Letters they were saying like over the last 4 or 5 years or whatever, it's Matt Olson, Marcus Semien, and Vlad for like the three players with the most games played and plate appearances.
so to that end, he if he misses time, it'll be because of a substantial injury. The Jays certainly aren't playing it like it's a substantial injury, and also you can take into account as a first baseman, there's definitely a sense of you're not going to be tested as much. You're not going to be really testing that hamstring quite as much as maybe you would if you were, say, a shortstop.
Yeah, that's fair. And he's a guy who can probably DH if you need to. I know Springer's kind of fitting in very well to the DH spot, if we want to put it that way, in reference to his defensive abilities. But yeah, I mean, I would say not to be concerned about. Joey Loperfido did play first base in his return to Buffalo
That was
yesterday.
interesting. That was
Um,
you keeping an eye on that? Is that do you feel like that's just a way to get him back to the big leagues? Because maybe for him, what he sees is they've got a bunch of outfielders and they don't have a left-handed hitting first baseman potentially to spell Vlad.
Yeah. It's interesting to me because like I thought that's something that they would have him do more this year was play first because last year once they got him he didn't play first at all, but he played first a bunch in Houston. And then this year he didn't play for like he when he first got called up, he played first like three times kind of in the lead up to his call up, and then he gets the big league and he's only playing outfield. And then so I think it's interesting that he gets back there. Like I know the Bisons have a pretty deep outfield, right? Like with Shrek, Pinyango, Clase, so there isn't a ton of playing time there anyways, but I guess it's worth monitoring. I think it's certainly an attractive ability for him to be able to play first base. I think Ty France being on the roster kind of changes your need at first base, but if you're looking ahead to like a potential playoff roster, if you're facing a team that has a ton of righties and you want like somebody who can play first base that's not Ernie Clement, in the case of Vlad, whatever, then Loperfido getting some innings there certainly would kind of impact that conversation.
Yeah, and if you really want to stretch things a little bit, it certainly doesn't hurt the trade value.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it's an off season. I don't know. He's been pretty good, and he's kind of a fun player. So I don't know if he'd be the one that you'd want to move.
This episode of the Bird's Eye View podcast is brought to you by BioSteel. Use code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order at biosteel.ca. Again, that's code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order. For all your high performance hydration needs, visit biosteel.ca. Thank you again to BioSteel for sponsoring today's episode.
Let's keep going kind of with I guess, the number one storyline in Blue Jays land right now is, of course, Shane Bieber coming back. And as a result of that, Eric Lauer will be available out of the bullpen this weekend. And it sounds, the way they framed it is that it's not a permanent thing and that it's just for this weekend and that it's a fluid situation because Bieber's start day lined up with Lauer's. What do you make of Lauer making that move to the bullpen this weekend? And do you expect that we'll see him back in the rotation?
Well, I kind of gave you my off air, I kind of gave you my take. I don't know if I got your take, so I actually kind of want to hear.
Well, you go first. Give your take on air
I think it's a mistake.
because
I don't see it. I don't get it. I just, the reason I say I want you to kind of, because maybe you will have a more rational, more positive spin on this because I see it really feels like the Jays are trying to be the smartest team in the room when there's a very obvious and simple solution to this, which is just running a six-man rotation and pushing guys back a start. And I know that the off days in the next couple weeks complicate that a little bit. You're almost, I think it was Ben Nicholson Smith or Arden Swelling or Shai Davidi wrote something about how it's basically like running a seven-man rotation. But I just don't understand the urgency to move your only lefty and in terms of just pure results, your best starting pitcher to the bullpen.
yeah, I think for a couple games, like I think that we kind of need to see what they're going to do more long term. I think Lauer in the bullpen, like he's the only guy of those five to have pitched out of the bullpen this year. With all five of their starters being righties, like having him be able to kind of come in and work in relief, I think is a really easy switch. I think if any of them get in trouble, like it's the button you're going to hit at this point. And I agree. Like it kind of sucks for decision wise, and there the six man I think would have made sense in September once rosters expand. I think that you don't want to like tax your bullpen more than it already has been this season, especially for this group where we've seen them get overworked at times. So I don't think that I have like a nuanced take on the situation as to, oh, the Marlins lefties are really bad, so you're okay with your righties facing them, which is kind of not the case actually. I think the Marlins are pretty good left-handed. Um, but I think when you look at it, like if Lauer is not back in the rotation after this weekend, if they like whatever their plan is after this, then there's, room for that conversation because, Barrios has struggled and it's a tough conversation because, realistically at the end of the day, like politics do play a role in it, right? And it's not what you want to talk about when you're in a race for a pennant, when you're in the race for your division. But Barrios is under contract for the next 3, 4 years, and this is a guy who prides himself on taking the ball every day and pitching a ton of innings and yada yada yada. So, you do want to keep that relationship good, right? Like you don't want to upset a guy like that. And I see you rolling your eyes. I know it's not the conversation you want to have,
I
but
just
it's
want to
it's it
say,
is a part
do
of
you
things,
not do
right?
you not think that on a team with never mind playoff aspirations, with potential first round bye aspirations, with World Series aspirations, do you not think you could go to Barrios and be like, we need you to put your ego aside and move to the bullpen for us for the next couple of weeks? Because he's gonna end up back in the rotation next year, one way or another. But if he's not one of your five best starters, he's not starting a playoff game. That is
No.
basically you can basically write that off. To me, my playoff starters are basically, I mean, honestly, it's game one probably Bieber, game two probably Gosman, game three probably Scherzer, game four probably Lauer.
I don't disagree. I don't
And at
disagree.
that point, like I just don't see the reason to, maybe you do like I mean, everyone hated it at the time, but maybe you get creative and you go with a Barrios Kikuchi, piggyback situation, but actually execute it properly and show some flexibility if the guy's out there throwing like Barrios was at the time. But just it doesn't to me make any sense for the Jays to overthink things. It really feels like this is a case of them overthinking things. And we can have the Barrios conversation because we got kind of into it as well. There's a there's a really decent chance Barrios shouldn't be on this team after 2026 regardless.
Of his option.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean I think he's gonna end up with that picking up that option without thinking. Unless he is completely insulated. How different is Jose Barrios right now to Kyle Gibson? I'm serious. I'm dead serious.
I mean, it's such a tough conversation because we've seen Barrios like go through this like wave, right? And it's funny because like the peripherals this season are worse than they were in his blow up 2022. And excuse me, this is a guy that, we've seen excel, but the last 2 months have been really poor. And, it's a guy that we've seen make adjustments. Obviously, he bounced back really well from that 2022. And, I mean, the velocity drop off is certainly concerning. The slurve hasn't quite been the same put away pitch that it was in the past. Um, I think that the red flags are there. The command has been worse this year. And obviously the strikeouts, when they acquired him, he was a guy who was striking out like 25% of hitters, and now he's striking out like less than 20. And I think 20% is kind of like the bare minimum for where you want starters to be in the year of 2025, right? And we've seen his walk rate, it's kind of creeping up as well. So like it's a nice guy to have in the middle of your rotation. And I actually think that it's good that they have him like kind of locked in for next year and the year beyond because, at the end of the day, they'll have that money to spend from Bassett's contract and Gosman's contract and Scherzer's contract. But beyond though, like when they do lose those three, they like don't have somebody that's stepping into that role right now, right? Like I think it's kind of nice to at least have like somebody that you know is going to take the ball and pitch and whatever. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like those innings do have to be a certain level of competitive to be valuable to the team.
How valuable are Barrios' innings? How
Well,
competitive are his innings?
right now it's not.
And then my follow-up to that is what are the chances that in 9 months' time, in spring 2026, we're even talking about Jose Barrios as a substantial part of the equation of a successful Blue Jays team? So bringing that back to this team, because that we're starting to get a little ahead of ourselves. Bringing that back to this year's team, I if you're really concerned about his feelings, you go six man. If you think you can massage his ego, because the downside here is he gets vindictive and opts out because you've broken his trust. I'm not sure that him opting out would be the wisest move from his camp regardless. So, does he have value around the league if he opts in? Like there's all these different machinations that are going to play out with Jose Barrios and exactly how the next couple of years with him go. But for 6 odd weeks, I definitely think you could go with him, take him aside, and say, "We need you to put your ego aside, and we want you to be a guy out of the pen." Who knows? Maybe the slurve plays up a little bit. Maybe the fastball ticks up a little bit if he comes back. Maybe you put him in a medium leverage role, and maybe he finds some success as a reliever in this, brief stretch. There's enough, again, machinations that you will be able to use him and have success with him. But to me, keeping him in the rotation over Eric Lauer, who, mind you, is a bit of a ticking time bomb himself, just really, again, feels like the Jays are kind of thinking too hard.
So let me run this scenario by you. So the way that it's lined up right now, Barrios is starting on Saturday against the Marlins. And then so that sets him up to start game one against the Brewers. And obviously the Brewers best team in baseball right now. So let's say that they are doing this right where so they get Lauer his pitch day behind Barrios on Saturday, right? So they bring in Lauer behind Barrios, and then that sets them up to kind of flip it so that you have Lauer going against Milwaukee rather than Barrios.
It's more compelling. I don't know if I'm not sure I'd want either of those guys up against the Brewers. That's how it's lined up. That's how it's lined up. But if you could shuffle some stuff around to set it up where you've got maybe Bieber, Gosman, Scherzer against them, that would be ideal. I don't know if that's really going to be possible, but
I just wonder
there's
like the whole conversation like I think that it is a relevant conversation because they are pushing for a playoff berth, right? Like
they're
they're
pushing for a
pushing for a
bye. I
division, they're
don't think
pushing
we
for
should
a
even be
bye.
talking about the berth at
Well,
this point. We should be talking about the Jays are swinging for a bye.
yes. That
And
yes.
that's where losing a series against the Pittsburgh Pirates becomes such a huge concern.
But what I'm saying is that in the scope of like this rotation conversation, right, that how they massage it over the next month, right? Because they said, and again, this could be they could be lying, right? But I do want to not just throw their words away because they said that it's going to be fluid and that it's not like a demotion for Lauer at this point, right? So, I mean, like it's an important conversation because they're going to have to like pick a lane eventually, unless they're just going to like do this kind of high wire act over the last month and try and get themselves to the postseason, like kind of matching these guys up against teams or however they want to line it up. But I think what they do their next time through will tell us a lot about kind of their plans with Lauer, with Barrios, and how they kind of plan to use those guys and deploy them through the final month. And whether it, is it maybe it is a straight demotion for Lauer, but we can't necessarily completely say that at this point.
Yeah, hard to say for sure, but I mean they could do that high wire act, and we'll see if they're able to land it. They have enough pitching depth that they'd be able to do that. Don't forget Trey Yesavage is potentially part of the conversation, and we might even chat about him briefly here and the success that he's had. But I just feel like you're really testing the limits here. You're really kind of trying to get a little creative, a little bit cute. And I just think that there's a decent chance if you go about doing things this way, you might get too cute.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you that there's probably nobody more frustrated with Jose Barrios right now than Jose Barrios. So, we'll see. I would like to see maybe him try to, instead of being like a 7 inning guy, try and be like a 5 inning guy, right? Because their bullpen is deep. They made so many additions, and if he's able to give them like 5 innings of 3 run ball, like that would be certainly
And
um
their bullpen's deep enough and good enough to cover this stuff up.
the last 4 innings, right? Yeah, so.
So it's in a certain respect, it would be almost beneficial for almost all their starters to be five and dive guys.
By
Obviously, it would
in the
tax the bullpen.
postseason, in the postseason, I
Oh, in the
think that's
postseason, yeah.
yes. But in the next
As
like
the leverage
month,
ramps up, the hook can and should and will
yeah,
get a lot tighter.
that's why you go out and trade for Louis Varland and Sir Anthony Dominguez, right? Like Braden Fisher was the guy who got sent down, and he'll be back up in 10 days or whatever. I guess he kind of has to do the 15 days in the minors before he can get
He'll
called
be
back
back.
up.
He'll be one of the two roster spots added, you'd imagine.
Well, he has to wait 15 days.
Yeah, so he'll be one of the 28 call or the 28 man. I guess that's not even 15 days
That's
from
not
now.
15 days, so maybe somebody else. But
Do you?
I
I
wonder if
don't
that
know.
rule sticks with
I don't
the
know.
roster expanded.
It'll we'll see exactly what they plan to do, but you can kind of see
The
where they
point
want to
is
move the
that
chess
their bullpen
pieces.
is really deep. Like at the
Exactly.
end of the day, you've got Little, Hoffman, Tommy Nance has pitched really well, Yariel. Like I mean, all the guys are really good. So
Yeah, and again, like the Tommy Nance thing, the only reason you don't designate him is because
these have
Fisher has the
options.
options,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah, yeah. It's gonna be like a heck of a managing job for John Schneider, kind of, when you get to the postseason, picking between those guys and kind of deciding when to, take that hook out with them. Um, I know we have on our rundown Manoah and Savage. We can do them quick. I think Manoah was better yesterday. Velo's still working its way back. I don't think that he's like anywhere near ready. And by the time his rehab window is up, he is certainly not going to be. Well, I'm not going to say certainly, but he will likely be staying with the Bisons rather than getting the call back up. Savage pitching again today for Buffalo a second time, first time. A little shaky, like he has been at the start of each level that he's been. So, we didn't get a chance to talk about him getting called up. I mean, do you have any thoughts on his potential to play into this like postseason September push, or do you have any thoughts on Manoah and where he's at?
well, I think the Savage stuff is way more exciting, and because we're running up against it, definitely would like to talk about that. And the fact that they're leaving bullets in the chamber. They very clearly, deliberately kind of managed his workload. And if he has a good start today, I think that anything is possible. And I know it's a lot to put a lot of stock in a one start, but if this just continues the trend where East Average makes the jump, maybe bumbles a little bit to start and then cruises. He won't have the runway obviously to do so with the Bisons, but one or two good starts, man, and all of a sudden, like that's a nice piece to add to a playoff roster.
Yeah, I think like with him, I think that they almost have to have like a specific need for him,
You don't think
right?
you can just call him in as like a you don't think you could just use him as a maybe not even a leverage arm, but a guy that could go two or three innings in a playoff
Like
game?
Jackson Jobim a little bit.
Well, that's what I figure, right? That's got to be because you're not using him as a closer. You're not using him as a setup guy. You're not using him as a high leverage, come in the middle of an inning and put the fire out guy. You're using him as a Barrios goes 4 innings, pitches well, you're down by two, you need someone to keep the game close, and you need someone to give you some length, and Savage comes in and gives you 2 innings of scoreless ball to try to bridge you over to the back end of the bullpen.
Yeah, like,
Like they don't really have a long man right now, right?
well, I mean,
Louis Varland's
they
kind of
got
that.
Eric Lauer in the bullpen right
Well,
now.
now they got Eric Lauer in the bullpen, but he's supposed to be starting game 4 of the series.
Um, Yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation, and like obviously, the reporting is that they've left the door open for him to kind of be that guy. I think the appeal of him like being such a unique pitcher who has such unique stuff, right? Like he would come in, nobody would have ever seen him before. Nobody would have ever seen a pitcher like him before, which is really I think kind of the appeal to Trey Yesavage as a whole is that like he's just so unique and nobody's seen a right-hander who doesn't have anything that moves glove side, right? Like everything's moving arm side away from him. And if like I think it's certainly appealing. Um, like say that the the last couple weeks comes or whatever, and Tommy Nance like stumbles a little bit. Like, would you rather have Trey Savage or Tommy Nance?
I mean, depends on how big the stumble is. You don't want to lose Tommy Nance for
Yeah.
nothing, but it's Tommy Nance.
So I mean, if it kind of came down to it, and on their postseason, I mean, you wouldn't lose Tommy Nance in the postseason. But if you were, picking between Trey Savage and Tommy Nance for your postseason roster, and let's say
It's
Nance gives up like a couple runs, in September, and you Savage looks the part in September, like who are you picking?
You're laying it all right there.
I mean, yeah, it's certainly appealing, and there's a pathway, and
Let's
you wouldn't
gamify
even
this a
have
little
to
bit.
like
Just
well
just
I
well
think
here
I
here
think
let's
Jackson
let's
Jobe is kind of relevant to the conversation because it's what the Tigers did last year, and they barely used him in the postseason. So I think the
yeah, but
experience wouldn't hurt.
no, of course, but and also the way that the Tigers were constructed last year was a lot of kind of next man up. Here let's like I said, let's gamify this very quickly. Give me a percentage odds that Trey Savage is on the Blue Jays postseason roster.
See, I would have like before I talked there, I would have given you a lower number, but I feel like I kind of talked myself into it. Um, 49.9%.
That is high. I was thinking 50 and was like, that's too high. That's way too high.
Yeah.
You're gonna be higher than I am.
I want to say so I want to say that it's more likely to not happen than to happen.
It's a 50-50 chance. It either happens or it doesn't happen.
But I gave it a 50.1% chance that it doesn't happen. What would you say?
Slightly weighted coin flip.
30?
I was gonna say 30% and be like, that's
Yeah,
probably on the high side.
man. Yeah, you know what? I talked myself into it. I don't know. We got to revisit the conversation because I feel like,
This will be a fun one to look back, and it's a tight turnaround. It'll be like a month from now.
yeah.
This will be a fun one to look at to check in on our
I mean,
maybe something like a Trey Savage o meter or something.
yeah, I feel like he's gonna be good.
Right now I'm at 30%. Right now you're at 49%. And
Yeah, I would like
we'll
to.
return to this.
I'd like to withdraw that statement.
All right. Give me your number. We'll put the number in the
You
rundown here
said
and we'll keep
30.
track on it.
You said 30.
Yeah. Give me your percentage that he's on the postseason roster. I'm comfortable with 30. It's definitely on the high side, but I'm gonna give him a 30% chance on being on
Hold
the
on.
playoff roster.
Let me just consider this.
Oh,
So,
he's doing some math now. He's pulling out the
yeah.
roster. He's got the 40 man. Who do they have to DFA?
That's
Who
a
has
good question though.
options?
They will have to DFA somebody for that. So, all right, now that I thought about the DFA thing, 20%.
All right, we'll say 20%. All right, we'll revisit this. We'll revisit this. Honestly, I think every time a Savage makes a start, we should revisit
Yeah.
this because
Yeah,
this will
it'll
be a
be
fun one to track.
a running meter. All right.
Yeah.
I know you got to run here, but one thing I'll give you another game of five percentage here. Percentage or if you want to give odds, whatever. John Schneider, AL Manager of the Year.
Sure seems that way. I mean, maybe not so much after this series, but uh, if the Jays keep winning ball games, then definitely. It's gonna be whoever finishes first in the American League. It's Hinch and Schneider, and basically, if the Jays win 94 games, it'll be Schneider, and if the Tigers win 96 games, it'll be the Tigers.
I don't disagree with that. I think that there is certainly going to be a very good case for John Schneider if the Blue Jays win the division, even if they don't win the league. Like right now, he is the favorite by Oddspedia. So, what a year for the Blue Jays. It's been incredible that we're in this point. I honestly, I don't think either of us thought that they would, one, be leading the division, but two, like in a position where they're looking at a first round bye. So
Yeah, and that's the goal, I think, at this point. That's, I think, the big takeaway here.
yeah. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us here today at the Bird's Eye View podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. You can find us there at the Bird's Eye View podcast. If you're listening along on the audio provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jori is at J Negin-Shecter, and the pod is at BEV_pod. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy Shane